Hi, Stephen Oliver here. I want to give you a couple quick ideas today for helping your school grow and focusing on your career as something that will be lucrative and abundant in the new year here. It's very important to be constantly evaluating and reevaluating and making sure that you're not doing things today the same way you did 3 years ago, the same way you did 5 years ago, just because that's the way you've always done it. Now, in some cases, there are systems that worked great 30 years ago, worked great 20 years ago, worked great 10 years ago, and work great today. And so if it's not broken, perhaps you shouldn't break, you shouldn't break it, shouldn't fix it. However, there are many times when you get into a lull and you've just done things the way you've always done them because it's comfortable rather than it's the right thing to do. And there are a variety of areas that we work with our members on to overcome that syndrome. Certainly one of those syndromes is staffing and having the proper people and training them properly and having the right level of motivation and capability. Another area is pricing, tuition structure, program structure. Another area is sales process, the first introductory, the enrollment process, the upgrade and renewal process. Those are three areas where school owners tend to get very complacent. And another area they get very complacent is on their curriculum and curriculum development. Many of us, I don't, but many school owners teach what was taught 50 years ago, what was taught 30 years ago, what was taught 20 years ago, just because that's the way they learned it. And so many times what your students need to learn and what you need to teach them are very, very different than the way you learned it 10, 15, 20 years ago, or from the way that your own hobby is developed. But anyway, what I want to do is talk about, again, quickly, those four areas are staffing. You tend to get complacent with your staffing. You tend to get complacent with your pricing structure and how your programs work. You tend to get complacent with your curriculum and what it is you're teaching specifically. And so let's talk about, just for a second, your curriculum structure. It's very important, I think, to do two things. And these are going to sound contradictory. But one, not to placate the trends of martial artists and not to placate the trends of the martial arts industry for no reason other than your own enthusiasm and excitement about perhaps learning some new thing. And over the years we've seen this happen many times. We've seen this happen whether it be with Kung Fu or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or with Eskrima or with Jeet Kune Do. We've seen things that martial artists get excited about, and then they change their curriculum based upon teaching what they're excited about learning fresh, as opposed to changing their curriculum based upon what the students want to learn and what their students are going to develop. The second thing is, and a lot of people in the industry are now, you may be familiar with, maybe using a rotating curriculum, and it's a very useful discovery. And putting your curriculum into that kind of structure will save your staffing and improve your student quality. However, it's also important as you make changes that you evaluate what you're teaching and make sure that it fits with the needs of your students, not that it fits with, again, your own idiosyncratic or your own personal enthusiasms. I've accused several of my friends of confusing their hobby with their career. You want to look at who is your market. In other words, if you're teaching, a simple example, if you're teaching to 50-year-olds and up, jump kicks probably aren't a great idea. If you're teaching to 7 and 9-year-olds, things that are very complicated, hard to learn, slow to master, may not be a great idea. You've got to decide what your particular market is. In other words, the age group and the psychographic and the demographic of that group, and then you want your curriculum to mold what they need to learn but also what they want to learn. So it's very important to take those considerations in place, and it's really important to step back, empty your cup, and take a clean slate before you move forward on what it is you're structuring your curriculum, and then put it into a rotating structure. Again, that's something we're working with all of our clients on a daily basis.